Carroll Food Services provide in-house catering for corporates and schools throughout Ireland. I spoke with their Managing Director, Kenneth Carroll, to find out what impact the coronavirus had had on his business. Thanks for joining me, Kenneth.
You're very welcome, Ellen, and good to talk to you again. Well, Carroll Food Services is a company I set up myself back in 1994, following my family exiting the industry. So we operate in-house catering facilities in sectors such as education, business and industry, public sector, government departments, that sort of thing, as well as healthcare. They would ordinarily set up the facilities and we'd come in and manage it as a turnkey project. Well, we have 46 employees at the moment, spread over 20 sites. Most of them are cooked on site. I mean, we would have a mix of, there are some cafe operations where we just have front of house barista and salad bars and grab and go units where food would be prepared off site. But in the main, it's places that we would operate with full kitchens where they would produce on site.
So how did COVID impact on you then?
It was very difficult because obviously whether we stayed open or not was a client decision. So we were very much in close communication with our clients about it. But ultimately, by the 28th of March, all but 3 of our 20 clients were shut down. This situation evolved so quickly, we had very little time to prepare for the level of shutdown that we experienced, but which started with our education and school clients on, ironically, Friday the 13th of March. It was, from the beginning of March, it evolved so quickly that you really had to dance quickly on your feet to stay ahead and stay with it. Some of our clients were actually underwriting the cost of the employees, and others where that they didn't have that facility. We obviously keep them on the 70%, the actual subsidy from government, and others then were temporarily laid off. But most of the people, thankfully, are on the government subsidy with us. So
what's the communication like with your clients then?
the communication is ongoing, but we've very little clarity, to be very honest, Ellen, as to when people are going to open back up. I suppose some of our clients with office spaces, for example, were initially talking about August 10th, that this magic date in August where they were going to start up. But even then, we don't know what sort of level of service we're going to be required to provide, and how many people will be catering for in those buildings, because I'd say there's still going to be a mix of home working as well.
So you really have no control at all?
No, we
very,
don't.
very little.
No, we don't. I mean,
That's
the places
terrifying.
it is a bit. I don't think about that too much, to be honest, but plan for the positives. The places that we have open, for example, we would have probably for a table of 4, we might have 2 on it, and then you would have your queuing spaced and you have the 2-meter distancing. And that's part of our focus. We really have to focus on social distancing, innovations in terms of our service, looking at closing down the self-help salad bars and making those what I call assisted service, where people are actually there to help the person and serve it to them and plate the food for them, because self-help won't be allowed under the new regulations. The clients that we have open are in the residential care and healthcare, and then one is a pharma client. So they're still open. We've actually used those as test beds for actually how we're going to do this. And it was very much a situation that was evolving, to be honest. So we had to be in close communication with the client as to how we were going to do it. And we worked it out very well. It depends, because each building is entirely different. No kitchen is the same. So we're actually got people using visors. We have a stock of visors and PPE where that will, if people aren't able to sufficiently socially distance, well, at least they have visors and face masks. And people were saying to me, or you might hear in larger hotel operations where they might schedule people to work at different times. In our business, where we're working Monday to Friday daylight hours, you don't have that facility. So you have to work and develop systems in the kitchens that will facilitate. There are no certainties, but it's down to actually communicating with them and talking to them. And I talk to the unit managers, and I've two very good ops managers who work with me, and they talk to the unit managers, and then the unit managers in turn are keeping in touch with their teams. But part of the preparations for return to work is that we've created a training plan and handbooks for each staff member, so they know that that's there for them, and it will facilitate them in how they come back to work. There's a great unknown and a fear factor which we need to manage and put to rest, so to speak. The training will happen when they come back, but what we've done is in the staff manuals, it's telling them what's expected of them when they do come back to work, in terms of a safe delivery of a service, and in terms of their own safety in managing that, and the collective responsibility to their team members. We're seen as employers within the client environment, and we certainly are very much controlling our own staff, and we're seen as the employers in the first instance. So we have to manage that.
What they do with the rest of the building and the rest of the staff is their issue, and how you manage the food is entirely down to you.
Yeah, that's what we call it a management contract, and that's part of our remit to actually do. Well, staff-wise, they are keeping together as teams, because it's not a case that there's no work with me, but there's work with somebody else. So this is quite unusual. It's affecting everybody, and it's right across the board. So we're supporting them as much as we can. Certainly, I think the communication aspect is so important, because I don't underestimate the impact on people's mental health in this instance, where they're cocooned and they're in a brand new situation here. It's very difficult. But the staff are keeping in touch with us, and and the managers are keeping in touch. And I would have a regular email that goes out to all my managers saying, look, I'm doing an interview here, or I wrote a piece here, or what do you think, and get their input. And I've also involved, there are significant protocols that we have to put in place to make sure that workplaces are safe to work in, and they are fit for purpose under the new normal, if you like. And I know that the HSE and the health authorities are going out doing inspections with places that have already opened. So we need to be on top of that. I suppose some places are going to come back with less numbers. I suppose the staffing in most of our sites would be pretty tight anyway. So I would think that I would be relatively confident that there will be jobs for all of the people to come back to. That's what I would say. And I would want to give that confidence to people. Ultimately, as a wider picture, I'm sure there will be fall off in demand for staff, and that could lead to redundancies. But at the current stage, I don't see it impacting me. I hope I'm right. But there are apps being developed at the moment, and I would hope to avail of those in terms of innovating in our service. And if we need to social distance in a restaurant, for example, in a staff restaurant that has limited seating, we may introduce a pre-booking app so that you book your time. So we will manage our break times in that. We will also have, I'm looking at an app as an extension to existing point of sale stuff, where people will be able to pre-order. So click and collect effectively, so they'll come down and collect it and maybe eat elsewhere. If they're able to eat elsewhere, that's great. But some organizations don't want people eating at their desks. We have to manage that and see and how we manage. In terms of getting stuff to people's homes, there are services and people are developing apps for that. I see some logistical issues with that in terms of delivery, and we need to work through those before we actually say, yes, that's something that we can do. But it is something that I'm looking at. I think I was watching a webinar of industry guys in the UK, and there was a survey of the people watching the webinar, what they most miss about eating at work. And was it the social aspect, or was it the health or the cost because it's subsidized price? And they said sitting down, 70% said sitting down to talk to their colleagues. That says to me that people actually want to go back to a place where they can work separate to their home. There's a psychological thing of being able to close the door when you come home from work, and it's a different space. And then you leave it the next morning to go into work, and you can leave your home problems at home and your work problems at work. Part of what I sell, the social aspect of food in the workplace is part of what I'm about, in that we create a social space, a social atmosphere, good food, nutritious, and then we're contributing to people's welfare. So it's not just putting food on the plate. And one of the first things I did when this thing started was to launch a new delivered meal service. And I promoted it through LinkedIn and through social media. And there has been a trickle of inquiries, quite a few inquiries. I think that in its own will come into its own when businesses go back, and they may not be opening up with a full service, so they will require this particular delivered service and their individual portion packs. And it will also make catering more accessible to smaller businesses. The other thing I thought was interesting from a communication point of view was that people were much more responsive to you when you made an approach. And they were looking for people to talk to, and it was good when somebody reached out to them. They were more responsive or more likely to respond to you. I always saw myself as public relations and trying to get out there and spread the message about Carroll Food Services. But I do see my role very much more in that, and I have been doing an awful lot of work in that. Well, in any sector, I think you need to keep your hopes up. You need to be, as a leader, you need to have a positive outlook. I don't believe in negativity. My father always said, never close the door, because you never know when you might want to use it. But also, if you find an obstacle, you'll find a way around it. And I firmly believe that there are ways around here. We may have to innovate. We may have to do lots of different things. But whatever business you're in, you've got to stay positive and say, well, this too will pass. We're going to get through this, and we're going to survive, and we're going to prosper. We may be a different looking business in the future, but what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with changing your business model. So that's what I'd say.
There speaks a true entrepreneur. Kenneth Carroll, thank you for joining me.
You're most welcome, Ellen. Thank you.
There were 3 key takeaways for me from that video. The first is knowing exactly what you're selling. It's much more than the product. The second is understanding that public relations is a vital part of the role every leader plays in business. And the third was understanding the value of sharing your public relations collateral, your media interviews with others on your team. Understanding the product. Kenneth fully understood that although he was in the catering business, he was selling much more than food. In each of the canteens, he was selling a social space, an atmosphere, good food, nutrition, contributing to people's welfare. A holistic overview of the product made him a much better salesperson. PR as part of leadership. He said that he always saw himself as part of public relations and public relations as part of him. The job of a leader, he said, was to spread the message about the business. And sharing public relations is good for the team. In his regular emails to team leaders, he pointed them towards media interviews that he had done. I'm doing an interview here, I've written an article there, so that they in turn could share with their team members, and everyone could see the value of keeping the message out there. The company is good, the company is going, together we will find a solution. Essential online training solutions for communications professionals. The PR Training Academy.